It shouldn't be a silent stream. Let me know if you can hear me. I had one microphone connected and I turned off the other, so I don't know if you can hear me. But anyway, if you can't hear me, I'm using something called a gloss glazing liquid to kind of like show you that you need a little bit of this reflective quality. See how it's kind of reflecting here? In order to get your darkest darks. And it's kind of like a slow drying medium, but anyway, I don't know if you could hear me before, so that's the problem with doing live streams. I haven't done this in a while, so let's just go ahead and get started here. I'm going to introduce the colors again. It's titanium white, yellow ochre, brilliant red, burnt umber, black, which is basically just a ivory black kind of color, ultramarine blue. So thanks for letting me know about the audio. It's a little weird. I had this microphone connected, and then I guess it wasn't connected. Who knows? So with acrylic, this is what you need to know right away when it comes to mixing color. You need to have some prior experience mixing colors before you start mixing color for a portrait. So for example, for this Rembrandt, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, and I know you can't see it because I can't have a parallel palette that's wet, because as you can see, this is going to start dripping down. So I'm going to just tell you what the mixtures are as I do it. So it's yellow ochre, burnt umber, a little bit of ultramarine blue, and white. So this is going to be our first little mixture. Yeah, I apologize for the audio. I couldn't really get one of my microphones to work. So now with acrylic, I'm going to show you a couple techniques that you can do, and there's a lot of benefits to acrylic that I wasn't quite aware of before. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt umber and black, and we're going to make kind of like a darker warm version of that color, which is going to lead us kind of like right next to the shadow. And yeah, I've been going through some things, some like life things, so I haven't posted in a while. I'm not gonna get into that, but yeah, this painting, we started it about almost a month ago. I feel like maybe it was 3 weeks. I'm not sure, but I want you to understand something very important, and I guess not a lot of YouTubers or YouTube artists will say this, but I was wrong with my initial interpretation of acrylic for the past decade. And I've made a lot of videos about oil painting and how to paint a Rembrandt with oil paint, how to do almost anything in oil paint, but I haven't really done that much with acrylic. When I learned how to use this Stay Wet palette like 4 years ago or whatever it was, you know, I didn't really put in as much time as I should have. And I guess it's a good thing that I took a little break from creating videos and things like that, because what I did was, let me show you here. And if you want to learn how to use any kind of material, if you want to like self-teach something, do a cast. So this is a cast painting that I did, and this is what you're gonna do at an art academy. And I did like, I don't know how many of these, like forever ago. So this is all acrylic, and this was actually before I started using the Stay Wet palette, but this entire thing is acrylic, and this actually doesn't even have the medium. So this was something with acrylic. I'm not finished with these portraits, but again, this is an acrylic portrait study from a picture, not so great, but there's another one that I'm working on, which is a Bouguereau, and the goal is really to show you that yes, it can be done in acrylic paint. And that was one of the main questions that I had for years. Everyone asked, can it be done in acrylic? Can it be done in acrylic? And most of the times I said no. Like, I didn't know that it could be done in acrylic. And I never really, at least I hope not, but I usually don't say with a absolute certainty that the answer is no. Because I do have, and I'm going to gray this out a little bit, so white and burnt umber is actually going to give me the gray, grayish color, grayish warm color. I can't ever really say something with absolute certainty because I do have a background in the sciences. So, like in science, you can never really say that you proved something to be true. You've shown it to be true within a given whatever percentage of doubt. That's the sciences for you. So blending these colors the way that I'm doing now, I'm using a technique right there, and it's called I call it dry brush because that's what it's called in oil painting. So I am an oil painter that's teaching myself how to do oil painting things with acrylic paint. So you just basically let the brush run out of paint and dry off, and it blends automatically, as you can see, as it did right here. It blends just like oil paint. So that right there looks just like oil paint. Really no difference other than the texture and the fact that it dries right away. But yeah, thanks for telling me about the audio, those of you in the comment section. You say you wrote, thought that taught that too for a long time, but not an artist by profession. No worries. A lot of people, including myself, will tell you that, like acrylic is meant for painting walls. And initially it was designed, at least to my knowledge, you'll always hear me say to my knowledge, because I can't really tell you anything with absolute certainty, unless I have like a perfect reference to whatever I'm talking about. But what's going on, Hard John? Haven't heard from you in a while. I'm over here experimenting with some things with acrylic. But yeah, I will say the advantages in acrylic for me these days are actually such that I've been using acrylic more than oil paint. And it's not because I'm trying to tell you that acrylic is better. It's a different medium that has certain advantages over regular paints like water mixable oil paints or just regular old traditional paints. So yeah, you don't have to use acrylic. You can go your entire painting career without ever using acrylic. You don't have to use it. I decided I would spend however many hours it would take to make like 3 or 4 or 5 paintings. And there's actually one behind this, one of like a John William Waterhouse study that I'm still working on, also in acrylic. So I've taken some time to get used to this new material and learn the little quirks behind it and techniques that you can use to make your transitions, your compositions, and things like that. But one of the things I gotta tell you right away that's different with acrylic versus oil paint is the fact that you have to be very decisive with your choice of colors and planes, because you can see these things, they dry right away. So it adds the fact that it dries in the blink of an eye. It adds timing into effect. And when I did this grisaille, this black and white start, that was the thing that I spoke about the most, and utilizing that open window when the painting is wet in order to apply these transitions. And what I eventually found out after that video, and I bet you're going to be glad that I waited to do this upload or stream, I was initially going to record this and then post it for you later, but I decided I would just live stream it because I don't think I've done this that many times, if maybe not ever. Acrylic portrait Rembrandt live stream, I don't think I have. But you can, like I mentioned before, let the brush run out of paint and essentially just dry brush a soft edge. And I've actually learned that you can do that even with your lights, not just your darks, but with your lights. You can let the light drag across just like with your darks. So there's a lot of advantages with the acrylics that I wasn't really that aware of before. Hey, Stephanie Thompson. And it's not to say that I'm going to only use acrylic now and like I'm in acrylic world. It's just something that I felt like doing, something I felt like learning. Acrylic's always been a question that I've had throughout the entire live streaming experience on YouTube. Is that oil paint? Can you do that with acrylic? Is that acrylic paint? These are the number one questions I've had in my entire YouTube live streaming career. And as you see, I'm going in plane by plane. I'm very decisive, for better or for worse, about what values I'm going to use. And I'm carefully mapping out these planes, these transitions. And when it comes to structure, light and shadow, value transitions, there really isn't a difference between acrylic and oil paint. That being said, there really isn't a difference between any material when it comes to turning form. Light and shadow is always going to be light and shadow. Color is always going to be color. There is a right and a wrong to proportion. There's also a kind of like a interval of close enough. You could be 96% accurate, and most of us, including myself, wouldn't be able to tell that the nose is a little bit long or the eye is a little bit too far to the left. So these same principles apply in acrylic. So now, how do you go about blending color in acrylic? You absolutely don't need to have an underpainting like what I did for this one. I chose to start this painting in monochrome because at the time I had just started getting back into acrylic and experimenting with the fact that it dries, and then getting through the frustrations of this just dried on me, now I'm going to have to repaint it, and that's not true. Use the fact that you can dry brush or paint wet into wet, and the soft edge kind of just happens on its own. The whole blending part. Now, those of you that are wondering why on earth I'm posting on or streaming on a Sunday, I told you I've been going through some things. Like, I never really fully acclimated to this move to Northern Virginia, and it's been almost 2 years now. And certain things, like mostly relating to pool, me trying to learn how to play pool, and just adapting to a smaller studio has been an issue for me. But at this point, like, there's so much more that I want to bring into light for you that I have not done before, involving acrylics. It could be a thing where I could almost do everything that I've done in my 14, 15, however many years of painting I've been doing with acrylic and show you that it is possible. It's just different. There's just some differences involved in it. Now, as I transition from one color to the next, I know you can't see my palette, and that's because I can't really have it there, and I said it before, is because a wet palette, as you can see, things start to drip. So please consider that these colors are no more complicated than white, yellow, ochre, burnt umber, and perhaps a little bit of black. The burnt umber itself is warm. Burnt umber is a warmer version of raw umber. I'm not using expensive brushes. I'm not using expensive paints. I'm not even using an expensive canvas. And I'm going to confess another positive thing that I've noticed with acrylic is that I'm going to preface this by first saying please paint as thin as you can with the least amount of water as you can. You see, I'm not like caking the paint on, but I'm not applying any extra water to the brush other than what's already available on the Stay Wet palette. Remember, the sponge underneath of the paper palette on the Stay Wet palette is it has water. So you layer thin. Hopefully you follow me. You layer thin with the least amount of water possible. What happens is if you use a cheaper canvas that has a lot of texture, like this one has a lot of texture, what happens over time is as these thin layers start to dry, they actually turn this canvas into a smooth canvas. So it starts to create basically the opposite of a textured surface. It actually corrects the it's easier to just show you. So this one, with all of its subtlety, it's actually the same. This is the same canvas, and it was on clearance at Michael's. It's just one of those cotton canvases that's horrible. It's got all this kind of texture to it, and you see the background. You can see it right there, how textured this is. And then this is like almost like a panel. Almost like a panel. And that's because it seals the canvas, which is something I noticed recently. It's not something that someone taught me. I just figured it out. And now I'm showing you what it does. And it's a nice thing that you don't really get from oil paint, because the number of layers that you use to finish an acrylic painting, acrylic portrait painting, the number of layers that you use is exponential compared to a oil painting. It is a pretty decent number greater than an oil painting. So this effect is different, and there's a lot of benefits to it. Yes, thank you for that comment. Almost like it gets burnished. Yes, and I can relate to that word really well because it's something in the pool world. When burnish is something that you use, it's to install a pool tip. So I'm accustomed to that term. Yep, absolutely. It's like it gets burnished in the sense that like the material gets sealed and ultra smooth. So as I continue to build these layers, it starts to get really smooth. Now here's the thing that may come as a shock, but you can work longer hours on an acrylic painting with less work than an oil painting, and that's because as this already dried and it did its thing, all I gotta do is be very decisive with my mixture and paint right into it. So there have been times, like today, where I didn't really have anything to do, and I didn't feel like setting up my oil painting stuff because you have to pour out all the paint, or you have to take it out of the freezer, and then you have to make sure your brushes are clean. I'm not cleaning these brushes at all. I'm keeping these brushes, believe it or not, in a McDonald's large cup. This used to be a Diet Coke, and this is a McDonald's cup with cheap brushes. I kid you not, these are cheap brushes from Michael's, and I'm pretty much telling you all the secrets, all the stuff that I just figured out recently, and I'm going to continue to figure stuff out. But with oil painting brushes, let me compare this to oil paint. With oil painting brushes, you need to have brushes. This is an oil painting brush. It's a Sable. I haven't used it yet. You see it's still brand new. These brushes with oil paint need to hold a lot of paint, yet apply a soft touch. That is not necessary with acrylic. You can use a cheap brush and apply a smooth value. Over time, it becomes thicker. So it negates the need for expensive brushes, and who knows? I can only say that to my knowledge currently. Maybe a year to a decade from now, I'll have a different opinion. But that is my current finding. Now, dry brush. I'm going to take this color, and I'm basically scrubbing. And you see here, I can create a transition. As the paint dries out, see how this creates a transition. And this right here just blows my mind that I can do that in like 5 minutes on a Sunday without having to get all of my colors out. When I close this palette, I don't do anything with it. It's an airtight seal, and I don't need to do anything with it. It is what it is. LL wrote beautiful paintings. Thank you. I'm glad you like my explanations. You said you've used everything except oil paint. Very interesting to hear what the differences really are. You wrote, do you use anything like an extender to your acrylic paint? Yes, I just started using it. It's a medium by Golden, as you see there. It's called Gloss Glazing Medium. It does make the paint dry a little slower than it normally does, but not by much. And I know you can't really see it as I turn the palette. It's right next to the white, right there. That's the medium. So it's what it does is, let me tell you why you need this. You need this because your darks, and this right here is a painting without any of the medium just yet. But you need gloss in order to make the darks look even darker, because acrylics, the darks in acrylics do sink in like oil paint. They do. They actually sink in like oil paint, which is a nuisance. It's a nuisance in oil painting as it is in acrylic, but the benefit with acrylic is that when you add the medium like I did over here, the difference between here and here, this dried already. It's dry. This is going to be like this 50 years from now. So it's going to stay dry. It's not going to change. But you need it. You need that in order to build your darker darks. And your acrylics will be indistinguishable from oil painting. Again, you don't have to go through all the trouble of buying your odorless mineral spirits, your your linseed oils. It says non-toxic, but everything is toxic, really. Even on acrylics. Acrylic is toxic too. If I decided to put this on my Chipotle burrito, I'd probably have some issues. So everything is toxic to some degree, but this is less of a hassle, really. And look, I'm dry brushing for the plane change for the lower eyelid, and there it is. So I'm glad you liked the explanation about the medium LL. So Hank Swift, you wrote, do you use the same process as, let's see, and brushes every time you work? Yes. And I'm going to preface that with, I'm always experimenting and always exploring. Anytime that you're trying to learn a new material, the best thing you can do is to bring out a cast. Do a cast drawing or a cast painting, and do this with any new material that you're going to use. For my advanced to say a couple years experienced painters, if you've never done one of these before, then do this with whatever material you're used to first, and then once you get the hang of doing these studies, then you do it with a new material, which teaches you how to do all these transitions and things like that. But it's always evolving. With this, I didn't use any medium, and it still managed to look dark, but I can reach an even higher level now with the gloss medium. And I also varnished part of one of my acrylics. I think it was a bird. Yeah, I painted a bird. So it was the 4th of July not too long ago. So I painted a bird with one of my students, the bald eagle, and I actually varnished like the lower half of it. I know you can't tell, but you can varnish it with your regular oil painting varnish, and it'll be just fine. So pretty much all the problems that I once had, maybe the problems that you once had with acrylic, are really not that big of an issue anymore, hopefully. So you wrote Uncle 60 one day, try, well, I don't even know how to pronounce that, something glycol as a acrylic extender. It gives you 10 to plus minutes. It varies. That's pretty good. Though, I don't know if I'd want 10 minutes, to be honest. I use the extender, or the medium. I actually don't use it to slow down the drying. For me, what slows down the drying, what's more important is actually the mixtures on my palette, so that I can keep this organization of values, as you can see. This is more important to me, and I'd rather this dry fast. I'm okay with this drying 30 seconds after I apply it, because I can dry brush and push these planes out, and I'm going to continue to do that to demonstrate to everyone that you don't need to worry about the paint drying so fast. It's actually a big benefit, the fact that it dries so quickly. At least that's what I think. And I'm not dipping this brush in the water a lot. In order to clean it, I'm just running it through the paper towel. Is one of the advantage of using cheap brushes. I don't need to worry about it. The brush gets damaged. It's a cheap brush. Acrylic is very harsh on your brushes, so you don't really want, I mean, you could try it, and I'll probably try it too. You can try to use a more expensive brush and see if it changes anything, and the odds are it might. But to my knowledge at the moment, I can get transitions like that, which would be just as fast with oil paint with acrylic. And I just did the same thing. I just run it through the paper towel, and I'm good to go. Back to the palette, and I'm only really using the medium for the purpose of having darker darks. in here, I'm not using the medium at all. Now, when it comes to mixing colors, with respect to portraiture, your colors, depending on who you're painting, are not going to vary that much. So it's going to basically come down to, this is a darker version of this, and that's it. It's not going to be that much more complicated. So Jazz W, you wrote, you go through so many acrylic brushes. You know, I've been keeping these brushes in that McDonald's cup, and maybe the secret is McDonald's cup, and I'm not sponsored by McDonald's, but and I shouldn't be eating McDonald's, but I mean, it doesn't go bad. I don't know. These brushes just they last. And these are just cheap Michaels brushes. It could be perhaps that, yes, I am scrubbing on the surface of the painting, but I'm not like digging into it, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm not kind of chopping into it. So maybe that's playing a role in the fact that my cheap brushes are lasting a long time. To my knowledge, I do think that everyone in general will go through more brushes with acrylic than with oil paint. I think. I don't know. I suppose. But I'm not sure. It's a conjecture. So Jazz W wrote, golden glaze medium is great for portrait blending. Excellent. I didn't know that. I was at Michael's not too long ago, and I'm not sponsored by Michael's, and I usually don't shop at Michael's. It's just, I told you, things have been not so great for me for the past couple weeks, so I've been out of it, and kind of to cheer myself up, I would just randomly go to Michael's and look at things, and I just bought the medium on a whim. It's gotta be the cup, right? It's gotta be the cup. The McDonald's cup. Who knows how gross that water is in the cup? Probably utterly disgusting, but it is what it is. Uncle 60, you know, it's the McDonald's French fry oil. It's gotta be the French fry oil. Who knows? Who knows, really? And for the longest time, everyone, I was using paper plates for my mixing. I've got a couple of them around here somewhere, but here's two of them, for example. Like, no wet palette or whatever, and it's really wasteful. Look at all this dry paint that I could have used, but to be honest, I did the same thing with oil paint, so it's not that big of a difference. But yeah, it's gotta be the McDonald's cup. And when that cup is like falling apart, you better believe I got another one. Yeah, I gotta clean the studio, man. But you know, whatever material you use, to be honest, you just have to learn the ins and outs. Like, spend the time with it. And I've spent quite a bit of time with acrylic at this point. To the point where now I'm comfortable explaining it, showing you how to use it. Yes, acrylic dries darker, but as long as you don't use too much water, it doesn't affect anything, really. And when I first started using acrylics and making videos about acrylics, and I haven't done that many. I've done maybe like less than 10. Out of like the hundreds or whatever videos I've done on YouTube. One of the first things I remember saying was that they dry differently, which is what makes it a little more complicated to use acrylic. But I think I was just I was just being a little lazy, and I didn't spend enough time to really like to tell you it doesn't make that big of a difference. As long as you mix your color without putting a ton of water. I haven't put this brush in the water cup like at all in the past 10 minutes. Like I said, when I'm cleaning this brush, it's going just on the paper towel, spin it on the paper towel, and that's it. That's all I'm doing. Now eventually I'm gonna have to recharge the mixtures on this palette, and I know you can't see it, but eventually I'm going to have to remix those colors. Remember, that is going to be a big difference and potentially one of the biggest cons to acrylic portrait painting, is that you have to be more decisive with what colors you choose. Oh wow, look at the super chat. Yes, thank you. Thanks for the super chat. New brush bunny or ice cream? Maybe both. But thanks for the super chat, Uncle 60. I really appreciate it. That's motivation for me to do more of these videos. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I don't even remember. What was I saying? I don't even know what I was saying anymore. So, you have to be more decisive with acrylic color and value, because as soon as you place it down, it dries. And I'll try the that extender that makes it dry in 10 minutes instead of like 2 minutes, but for the time being, what I'm telling you is, as an oil painter, you can get a lot of mileage out of the fact that it dries right away. So thanks for the super chat, Uncle 60. And to everyone, I say this all the time, so I won't disappear forever on you, but sometimes life happens and I'm just gone for a while. But just know that I'll always return. Like as long as I'm breathing and able to move my hands, I'm always gonna return. And apologize for being gone for so long. And this stream, you know what? I'm dedicating it not only to Uncle 60, but someone who wrote a comment. Let's see. Who wrote this comment? Somebody wrote a comment. I don't remember. On my previous one, somebody wrote that they were anxiously awaiting the second part of this video. I don't know where it went. I think it's under latest comments. This is what I get for trying to find the comment. You know who you are, whoever wrote that comment. Oh, him AS. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Uncle 60 wrote, do you use a wet sponge under your yes, it's a stay wet palette, and it's called STA without the Y. It's a really useful palette. So what you do is you basically vacuum seal it by covering it with this lid, and it keeps the paints wet for a long time. What I do is I actually keep a quarter. I don't know where it went, but I keep a quarter under the sponge. I see the quarter moving around. So it helps to prevent like mold or something like that. I don't know if it actually does anything, but I like to keep that in there. So thank you for the super chats. It's motivation for me to continue to make these videos. So Uncle 60, propylene glycol is slippery, use it sparingly. It's not something you'll find at Michael's. Propylene glycol, I think I remember using that in like chemistry class or something. I don't remember. Sounds familiar. So as things get further away from the light, they get darker. As they start to angle away from the light is the more correct, more accurate description of what I'm talking about. The more it starts to angle away from the light, the darker it becomes. Now this is to be mostly assumed to anyone that's already been doing oil painting for a long time and is just at this point just curious about acrylic. But you will find that with the acrylic there's a lot of benefits to it that are not like inherently obvious. So the fact that it does dry right away, forcing you to be more decisive, is a good thing, actually. I think once you bring it back into your oil painting, you're just that much faster, that much more decisive. So Stephanie, you have the same palette. Awesome, awesome. So Jazz W made your own stay wet palette, 2 cafeteria trays, together wet paper towel and waxed paper. I tried that actually. I used and I think I might have mentioned it in the last video. I used a whatchamacallit, parchment paper with paper towel underneath, and it works for like a day. But at least for me, I never got it to actually keep the paints wet for more than a day. I'm actually adding some red. And I know you can't see it. I apologize for that, but I'm adding some red to my skin tone mixtures here. So one of the biggest challenges that you'll face using acrylic if you're an oil painter, if you're used to oil painting, is going to be the timing. And I mentioned this last time. The whole video is actually about timing, being as decisive as you could possibly be. And you get into a rhythm with acrylic, like I just did there, and that was wet into wet. Just like oil paint, you eventually get into a rhythm, and the whole timing thing doesn't actually, it won't phase you that much anymore. So Jazz W wrote, clamshell 2 trays together and secure with bulldog clips. It stays wet a week. Wow. I haven't been that creative, I will say. Awesome. Oh yeah, I mean there's a ton to learn with acrylic. For example, now I'm going to use the medium for that dark right there, and the medium is, I know you can't see it, I'm sorry, it's dripping off to the side there, and I'm going to use it for my dark, so it's going to be black and the color called Brilliant Red. Oh, and mind you, this might upset some people, but I'm using the cheap stuff. This is the Artist Loft acrylic. I'm not using the expensive stuff. I'm only using a proper brand for the medium. Only using a proper brand for the medium. Will I upgrade my acrylics to Liquitex and Golden and all the other expensive ones, maybe, to experiment, yes. And it may change things. It might. I'm not denying that. As I said, I'm just starting to explore what I can do with this. So I can only tell you or show you what I've already done. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you like this is the only thing in the world that you need to use for acrylic. So some of you like things to be the same way all the time, every time. Order in the universe where nothing changes and everything's a perfect constant, and that's fine. I am different. I like things to vary. I like ambiguity sometimes. So when something throws me off with like the drying time being all kinds of different with this, I actually like that. I like to be forced to do something different. It just took me a while to be able to actually live stream it and like show you how to build form with it. But one thing I like about this, and if you only remember one thing about what I'm saying today, remember this. You can be a lot lazier with acrylic than oil paint, and you can actually get away with it. You can leave your brushes in a McDonald's cup and not clean your palette and just close it off and just walk away from the painting. You can walk away and you don't have to worry about how it's going to dry. You don't have to worry about the colors sinking in overnight. They sink in right away. And then you address it. It's a great thing. So Jazz W wrote that red is probably good because it's a bit more transparent as a cheaper paint. Yeah, probably. It might be. I know what you mean, actually. Yeah, like if I were to be using a cadmium, then yeah, that'd be kind of an issue. And we did the water mixable oil paints for like almost a year, I gotta say, I think. So it's only right that we now start to experiment with the acrylics. And my acrylic haters and oil painting only fans, not to quote whatever that site is, but my fans of oil painting that are solely fans, let's word it that way, solely fans of oil painting, do not worry. I'm not going to quit using oil painting. That's not gonna happen. I'm just trying to show you something that is possible that I once thought was impossible. Like that transition. That's a lazy person's transition. Again, let me word it correctly. Those of you that are solely fans of oil painting, don't worry. I'm not going to stop oil painting. I'm just showing you that right there is possible. And if not easier now for me than with oil painting. Oily there you go. Oh man, that's the beauty of doing live streams. You can't edit anything. That's great. And I'm not really that popular on YouTube anyway, so it shouldn't get in any kind of trouble. Yeah, that's the fun part with live streams. I missed you all. Like, honestly, I'm not someone that can paint for many hours by myself. Usually, even though I have actually done that recently and I did it with a cause, a rebel with a cause. Like I really did spend all that time so I'd be able to explain this to you. If I'm getting through to you or not, I'm not sure. But if I didn't get through to you in this video, we've got many other ones that are going to be on your way. Yeah, that was a good one. Him, ASF. Good one, good one. So Jazz W wrote, I paint for hours by myself and then watch you paint for hours. Thanks. That's one of the brilliant things about the internet. I mean, just this connectivity, really, like being able to talk to people. One of my students, shout out to you, Randy. I know that you'll watch this video, but one of my students, Randy, he's in California, but he uses this device that it's called a ham radio, that it is kind of like old school tech, but he's able to communicate with people almost all over the world, and that like connectivity, just being able to relate with people, make jokes with people like we just did. It's a good thing, really. It got us through the pandemic, and now after the pandemic, if it's even over, it's just something nice to be able to do. Now, color-wise, I added a tad bit more pink, but I'm balancing it out with ultramarine blue. As much as I would like to have a secondary palette camera, at the moment, I haven't set one up, and when I do, if I do, I know that it will confuse a lot of people because the palette itself is white. So, yeah, it's a little difficult. And honestly, if I could message the people that make this, they really should have a toned Stay Wet palette sheet. Right now it only arrives in white. So they really should have a toned version of it. I mean, once you fill the palette up with paint, it doesn't matter anyway, but in the beginning it's kind of a nuisance trying to gauge your values. So the subtleties, you can get into the subtleties like we did here and here really fast, and you can do that with oil paint too. So that's not that different. It's not really different at all. The only thing that's different is, again, the fact that it's drying right away. You got to be quick with your decision making. But don't worry about it though. Let me show you. You can use wet into dry, and it just the dry brush effect makes this look more round. So watch what I do. So this is light on the nose, but now I'm scattering it. See this? So I'm scattering it across the nose. So yes, it is kind of you could call it a cheap trick. It's blending into the shape there, but it's a wonderful trick to be able to do. I mean, I don't mind. You can call it cheap or whatever all you want, but at the end of the day, if it works, it works. So Steph Sharp, you wrote, how much time do you save by doing the grayscale first? Um, I think in this stage, you save quite a bit of time. I can't really like quantify. Like I can't tell you you save 45 minutes or 15% or more by switching to a grayscale. But I will say that you save a lot of mental energy in the fact that when you do the, as you call it, the grayscale first, you don't need to worry about color mixing. So if you are someone that is a little bewildered with color mixing, then you save a lot of mental energy, you save a lot of stress. Like, you don't stress as much, is what I mean, by doing the gray first. So that's a very useful thing. Now, if you are someone that has done oil painting for a number of years and you're comfortable working with direct painting, which we will do, the next one we do will be that way. But I still have to do a Monet. Someone asked me a while ago, and I didn't forget. I won't forget you. Someone wanted me to do a Monet painting, and maybe we'll do it with oil paint, maybe not. But you can do wet into wet with color. This one I started without the grayscale. Pretty much all the other ones I started without the grayscale or the underpainting. So you can see there, kind of, it's all just shapes of color, and then I went and kind of drew into it. And if you make any major drawing mistakes, the fact that this dries, you can actually go into it with charcoal or with pastel if you want to. Though I'm not sure about pastel, but with charcoal for sure, because you can just wipe it right off. So it's a lot of mental energy that you save. I will say you save more time by skipping the gray, but it's a tad bit more stressful to anyone that's not comfortable working with big planes of color. And I've got probably only a couple students that have gotten to the point where they can think in shapes of color and start to work that way. It's a very advanced way of seeing the world, basically. And I'll show you how to do it. And it's something that I've done many times with oil painting demonstrations on YouTube, so you won't be surprised by the technique, but what might surprise you is that it's virtually the same thing with acrylic, and after a while you're just going to forget that I'm doing this in acrylic. So I'm going to make a slightly more greenish mixture, and we'll get all the way probably down here, and maybe just let that be the video, and then I'll return at some point later this week, hopefully this week. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, sometimes just life gets to you, man. I can't talk about it, talk about it with my students, but not on the air, so to speak. Alright, so I'm going to add a tad bit more ultramarine blue into my skin tone mixture with a little bit of yellow ochre. Like I said, I'm going to have to set up a second camera on the palette, even though it might confuse a lot of you, as it confused a lot of people back in the day. Back when I first started doing that, because the palette itself is a different color. So what you mix on the palette will not look the same as what you're adding onto the canvas. You have to have an instinct for value And I'm really not sure how many Rembrandt acrylics there are, but we will do a number of these for sure. Maybe even recreating uh, paintings that we've done in the past with oil paint with acrylic. Show you that it is possible. And I am really sorry about the fact that like most of the comments about acrylic in the past have been, can that be done with acrylic? And most of the time I said no. I should have said to my knowledge no, but you know, at some point you really have to understand that there's so much more to learn than what's on YouTube, and I do the best that I can. I try the best that I can to give you the most accurate information, and most of what I'm showing you is what, you know, like most of what I'm trying to teach you is just what I can do, not what, you know, not anything in theory, but what I'm actually showing you. It's a little complicated. This is light, dark, starts to get light, and it's gonna get dark again as it starts to curve around. Basically the same thought process as oil paint. But I appreciate the super chats, everyone, and yeah, I'm using the cheaper brushes, and I'm not really taking that much care of them, but we'll experiment with some higher end acrylic brushes. I know that silver brush has an acrylic line, and what I think about acrylic brushes is that they should, for the most part, be tougher than oil painting brushes, in the sense that like they should be, I think they should be synthetic. Bristle would just fall apart if you leave it in water for too long, I think. So Jazz W wrote, looks really good over the grayscale. You never tried acrylics like this? Well, you don't have to, but you know, I always recommend experimenting with it. I'd say acrylic leans itself more towards what I'm doing here, which is kind of like filling in the blanks, already having your value scale. But I'll show you in future videos that you can skip that altogether and create pretty much the same effects that you can with oil paint, but with a different timing. Now obviously that's too red, so I'm adding ultramarine and yellow ochre into the skin tones. The Stay Wet palette is very important in here because the color mixtures have not dried, and the colors that have been on the palette were there since last night. So like I said, you have to be very decisive. Now obviously that's still too red, so I'm adding more blue. And I can paint wet into wet because this has only been about a minute, 2 minutes tops on this plane. So I don't need it to be wet for 10 minutes. In fact, I prefer it to dry fast. And I have not put the brush back in the water cup pretty much the entire time. Let's see, so Jazz W wrote, colors I really love to use for portraits and acrylic, transparent red oxide, quinacridone red, transparent brown. Oh, cool, thanks for the suggestions. I think red oxide will probably not be available in like artist loft, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's something I'm gonna have to check out. Hey Seth, how long have I been painting? That's a good question. I don't even know. So I started back in like 2008, 2009 with oil painting and drawing, of course. I went to study in Philadelphia. So however long 2009 was, 2008. Hasn't been quite 20 years, but probably like 15 or 14 years. Long time. And even longer than that. When I was in middle school, I used to draw also. Mainly cars. That's what I used to draw. When I was in middle school, this one like the Fast and Furious, like the original ones, if you know what I mean, like Fast and Furious like 1 through 3. Before they started turning them into superheroes. Rest in peace, Paul Walker. But I used to be all about drawing cars, trying to make up my own cars. My first drawing, and luckily my mom saved it, was kind of like only a step above a stick figure. I think I was in kindergarten. So yeah, more than 30 years ago when I was in kindergarten. A long time on YouTube too. I mean, since 2017, I think. So him ASF wrote my mom is 64, just started last year. She's so into it. Awesome. And I always love to tell this story to everyone. When I was teaching in-person class years ago, and I had a student that was 90 years old that had just started painting, I think like that same year. So he picked it up pretty fast. He couldn't hold his hand straight, so his hand was always like this. But everything he painted had a very unique kind of like zigzag motion to it. On top of the fact that he actually did maintain his light and shadow shapes, which is like pretty much the biggest hurdle to get over for as a teacher. Any of you that are painting teachers will understand how difficult it is to get students to maintain light and shadow. And he did it quite quickly. He picked it up really fast. I can't say the same for myself with other things. I tried to pick up pool when I was 31. Spent 2 years on it and still not to the level where I kind of wish I was, but different things really. I mean, sometimes when we pick stuff up, it just happens right away. Other times we really have to have patience with ourselves. It's all a learning process. I know plenty of painters that started in their during their retirement, including some of my students. And now they're doing commissioned paintings and they don't really need me. You know who you are. You know who you are. If you're watching this, I haven't seen you in a while. Um, I hope the commissions are going well. And that's a good thing, actually. That's what you hope for as a teacher, honestly. As a teacher, you hope to be useless to your students at some point. You want them to outgrow you. My goal for each and every one of you is to get better than me. Make your own YouTube channels. Teach people. Inspire people, no matter what age you are, no matter what material you're using. That's the goal of a teacher. At least that's what a teacher should do for you, I think. But even then, I'll always be here. A really wise person named Albert, something I met during a billiards event, told me, and I asked him this. I was like, I said, I want to do. I don't remember what it was. It was a concept in painting or something, such and such. But I was like, so many people do it already, and he's like, so what? So many people open restaurants. Doesn't stop me from opening one and making a lot of money, because Albert opened up a chain of restaurants. And if you think about it, how many times, and I'm at fault for this kind of way of thinking, but I'm like, so many people have already done this, so what difference am I going to make? Well, the fact is, there's so many people interested in so many things, painting included. Think about a restaurant. Somebody's going to open another chain of restaurants in the next decade or so, and it's going to be a huge thing, right? Like Instagram or TikTok or whatever. Like social media, yeah, it's been around forever, right? Somebody's going to come up with something, right? That's going to be social media related. And they didn't invent the social media, and social media is already overrated, but it doesn't matter how many people do it, there's always going to be an interest for it. But yeah, I apologize if I'm talking too much. It's been a while since I've done one of these. So more red, the cheap brilliant red with black. And like I said many times before, I've been very lucky with my teachers in painting. I've had some of the best teachers I think you could have in the East Coast. And I didn't have to struggle that much when I first started to gather information. But now, I think is an excellent time, really, in art history. There's so much information out there, and I'm excited to see what the future is going to be. Not too worried about AIs like almost everybody else I know is. To see what happens, including this acrylic stuff. I mean, it took me how many years to spend this much time with acrylic? So try as much as you can to not, see, I'm flattening that out with my hand, to not put too much texture right away. So him, ASF, wrote, I'm doing a calligraphy for 9 years, but teaching is not for me. I get frustrated. I know what you mean. when it comes to the frustrations. I mean, like, you know, with pool, I'm I'm not a beginner to the like point where, you know, you could label me as an absolute beginner. I've got enough training that I can say I'm not a beginner. Sometimes I play like a beginner because I'm having an off day. But certain things like trying to find your center of vision and then aligning your cue stick with your center of vision, keeping a level cue, and like, you know, the basic fundamentals in pool is very difficult to try to show people. So I've tried to help like a couple people get their fundamentals down, like people that just started playing pool like that month or something. Um, it is kind of frustrating. Um, so I know what you mean, like trying to have a, you know, like a steady line of like a transfer of information, communication. Now, because that's going, I know that that dark is going to sink in and it's going to fade. I know that it's time to add the medium. So that's where the medium goes into play, into the dark. As you see, almost indistinguishable from oil paint. And guess what? If for some reason I gotta stop painting like right now and run out the door for some who knows what, there's an amazing sale going on at Target or something, I can with full confidence put my brush back in the McDonald's cup, cover the palette, and just walk away. Hopefully not forgetting to turn off my live stream. But I can do that, and that's a huge benefit to acrylic. I can't overemphasize how important that is. It sounds silly, and to you very dedicated people, you're going to laugh at me. But being able to be a little lazy is a good thing. Especially when you've been doing something for so many years and you just don't feel like cleaning your brushes or putting the palette in the freezer and you know, like things that you gotta do with oil paint. But as you see, pretty much indistinguishable from oil paint. Again, anytime there's a dark that spans a great portion, a big portion, that's when I use the medium. That glaze medium. Even the brush strokes themselves, I mean, that already looks like oil paint. I don't really have to do much. Okay. So we have covered some of the light on the face. You know, I could, in theory, take a break and then return and keep working on this in like another 30 minutes, but I'm not going to do that because it's important to have some time management. But anyway, again, one of the things about this is that it's already dry. I mean, even this is almost dry. I know it's not completely dry yet, but it's very reliable. I don't have to do much to it. And compare it to an oil painting of a similar subject. Maybe not this one, but compare this one to this one. This is what you wanted to know, right? Can it be done in acrylic? Pretty much. They're kind of the same thing. I mean, there's even more softness here than in this. And the color on this is more accurate than this. This is a little bit too orange. So it can be done with acrylic, and I'm sorry, I really am, for all the years of saying it's too difficult or whatever with acrylic, and I'm gonna continue learning it. And I'm going to continue posting, and who knows, maybe we'll redo pretty much almost everything that we did with oil paint with acrylic. I know a lot of you can't use oil paints and don't want to use the water mixables. So the fact that this is even possible with the acrylic, mind you, I mean, there's been some days where I was holding the painting in front of, like the other one, the Bouguereau, in front of the TV and just painting just randomly because I just felt like it. And I had the freedom of not having to do anything. Like I said, just like right now, put the brush back into the McDonald's cup as long as there's water in it. Seal the palette, the Stay Wet palette. Make sure it's a tight seal. And that's it. I mean, that's all I have to do. That's the entire cleanup with the painting. It's a really amazing thing to be able to learn. And I hope you found this insightful, somewhat entertaining, hopefully not too boring. And I really appreciate the super chats. Motivates me to continue to do these. Like I said, my schedule's been a little strange. It's been kind of a strange time for me, but I will return. We will continue to do these paintings. Thank you so much for all of your support, all of your encouragement, everyone. So we will return again sometime soon. Continue this one or start another one, whatever you want to do. We could even switch between paintings. It's all good. Let me know what you would like me to do. And that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you the very best, and I'll see you on the next one.